Welcome to Marriage Unmasked. Today we're talking about how hormones impacted our marriage disconnection. And this is a real issue. It was a real issue for us, and it is a real issue for a lot of couples. Hormone imbalances, hormone ups and downs, all that can really impact connection. It can impact the energy. It can impact attraction, intimacy, obviously. And so it is absolutely an issue. But what I also see sometimes is how we go to the extreme where it's easy to blame everything on your hormones. We don't want to do that today. We don't want to excuse unhealthy behavior or blame hormones for everything, because that's not necessarily true either. We are whole people. Sometimes, especially in Christian circles, you almost get looked at as like you're just a spiritual being. You just need to do these things and be good. And it's all about your spiritual part of you, which that is a part of you, but you are a whole being. And so we also want to talk about your nervous system and your hormones and your physical health and your physical needs and your emotions. Like, that is all part of you. And that's why this is an important part of the conversation when we talk about disconnection in your marriage, because this is part of the whole person that is you.
Yeah. And sometimes in a marriage, you have this story in your head that you're having this problem in the relationship, and what is actually happening under the surface, behind the scenes, is really there's a physiological thing going on with the hormones that is really at the root cause of what's going on in the relationship and how people are showing up. Not that that's the only thing, but that's a big part of the root cause of why this is happening. A wife might wonder, why am I getting annoyed with my husband all the time? I'm getting really, really annoyed with him. And he might be thinking, man, she's irritable all the time. She's always kind of like getting upset. And it could have a hormonal thing, like when a wife has lower estrogen, it does affect her emotions, and it can affect that environment. She is getting more irritable because of the hormonal backdrop there, not necessarily because there's a relationship issue. Sometimes a man, as his hormones start to drop, he can appear more passive. He has lower energy. He doesn't have as much drive in the relationship. And that can get interpreted as he's just checking out, that he doesn't care about her anymore, or things like that. But what may be happening is his testosterone is dropping and his health is being affected and his energy is affected by that. And that is what's happening behind the scene and really driving this lack of energy in the relationship, even though they think, hey, he just doesn't care about me anymore. Hey, she's just being irritable all the time. We can tell these stories about what's going on, and we're not getting to that root cause, which a lot of times can be a hormonal issue that's hiding under the surface.
So what happens a lot of times is then when you don't understand what's happening in your body or what's happening in your spouse's body, you end up like putting a lot of blame and shame on them, where compassion and curiosity is actually needed. Women end up feeling like they're not enough, or there's something wrong with them for just being exhausted postpartum, or a man gets defensive for having low testosterone symptoms that actually need attention that affects your intimacy or sex or the energy between you, the connection. And so you can end up feeling pressured when really what's needed is support. Now there's more friction, there's more disconnect, and what you're both really needing there is healing, right? Especially the one who's having the hormonal issues, and sometimes it's both of you. You need that healing, you need the support, you need nourishment. We're living in this over-stressed society, and we don't really take care of ourselves. We're needing that rest, and we're needing safety, and we're needing wisdom. But a lot of times we're getting the blame and the shame. And so it creates this really painful disconnect. And now on top of the hormone issue, now there's all this added emotional pain. And we'll talk a little bit about what that was like for us, but it's really not helpful. And I know I've probably used this exact wording, but the whole like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You're so moody, right? Or what's wrong with you? Why don't you want sex more often, or whatever? It matters how you're feeling. But instead of like going to them with that blame, shame kind of thing, really, I want to encourage you to identify what emotions you're feeling, because they do matter, right? It doesn't feel good if your spouse doesn't want you. It doesn't feel good if your spouse is irritable, or they're just super tired all the time and they just don't seem like themselves. And so your emotions matter. And it's important to find out what's going on for you emotionally, and then also get curious That curiosity and compassion can come from that overflow of you taking care of yourself, processing your emotions. Then you can offer them that compassion and that curiosity of what might be going on here physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, because you're just this whole very complex person, and it's not just one thing usually, and one part of you really affects every part of you. I used to be a health coach, and I used to work specifically with adrenal issues, and that is a lot of hormone issues. If I know one thing from all my years of working in health and fitness and nutrition is everything is connected in your body. So when hormones are off, it is impacting every part of you as a person. And so I think that's just a helpful thing to remember is like your spouse, if they're struggling with hormone issues, they didn't ask for this. Yeah. And it's affecting them all through their body. And it's so important for us to be able to bring that curiosity and compassion.
Yeah, it's crazy how many layers there are, and getting at all of those root causes to really heal things is so important. You can't just pick one and think it's going to solve everything. But men and women experience their hormone changes differently. We talk a lot about women and their hormones in relationships stuff, but it's more obvious to see what's happening because there are like cycles that happen, and there's seasons that happen. A woman's hormones rise and fall during her monthly cycle, and a man experiences things very differently. A man starts out with really high testosterone when he's younger typically, and then over time he experiences a slower decline in his testosterone. It naturally starts to become less and less, especially when he doesn't support himself and when he's not being very healthy in the way that he's taking care of his body. And it creates this whole different dynamic because a woman who is going through these different cycles, and then you throw in like perimenopause and menopause and postpartum and pregnancy and all those different seasons that she's going through. Like she's experiencing ups and downs in her emotions in a much more expressive way. That emotional environment comes out more. Whereas a man, as he experiences changes in his testosterone and his hormones, he tends to kind of shrink back and become less expressive and less active and less involved. It's interesting how they work counterintuitively in some ways. And so that can cause a lot of friction in the relationship when you're experiencing those very different atmospheres. And this can show up a lot in how you handle certain situations in the relationship or in life in general. The hormones are kind of almost like the environment in which you're doing something. If you run a race on a sunny day by the seashore with a cool breeze and everything's just great, you're going to be able to go through that race really well. If you're running the same race, doing the exact same thing, and you're at a higher altitude in the mountains and you've got a rainstorm going on and the wind is really picking up and it's cold, you're going to have a very different experience of running that same exact race, doing that same thing. And that's important to think about, especially as a man, thinking about your wife. Maybe she does the same task in certain part of her cycle. It might be more of an easy experience for her when she's in that environment. But she can do the same task when her hormones are low, and it's a very different environment. It's much more stressful. Her hormones can affect how she's able to work through that task. And we as men need to have compassion for that because that's part of the picture. It's neither right nor wrong. Her experience of certain things is going to be very different depending on the hormones that are in her body at that time.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, like, okay, Adam talked about a woman has a monthly cycle. Her hormones shift differently every month, but a man has a daily cycle. So his hormones are shifting each day. It's like he starts out the day, he has high testosterone, and then that can actually decrease throughout the day. And that's actually helpful to note too, because for us, that was an issue at some points, but that was important to know. Isn't it so interesting how God gave men and women such different hormone cycles?
Yeah.
But I think it is important for us to understand each other's cycles. And it's funny because lately Adam's like, are you in your luteal phase?
It's so important to actually know these things. Like, that's part of knowing your wife, is knowing kind of where she's at in those times. Like, very important information for a man to know. Sometimes I don't always know it right away, and I got to ask her, which...
Well, Well, it's just funny because after 20 years, now he is asking about it.
Yes.
And I applaud being aware of your wife's cycle because that is part of who she is. And so it is important as part of your role as her husband to be able to support her through what she's going through. But I don't like when men use it against her. And I felt that even with us a time or two.
I mean, we can get really frustrated in a moment and we can say things that are not helpful or healthy. And we can refer to hormones as part of the reason why something's happening. It can come across as very disrespectful to the situation. And so, that's definitely happened too for us.
Yeah, like you don't want to use it as a weapon.
No.
Like, oh, well, you're, and that's why you're acting like this.
That's really an immature thing to say. An immature way of handling the emotional environment of the hormonal changes. Yeah.
So for me, with our story and how my hormones impacted our marriage and the disconnection, we obviously have 5 kids. And so I was pregnant a lot, especially towards the beginning. Pretty much I was pregnant and then I'd give birth and I would breastfeed for like a year or two. And then I would get pregnant again. And then I would, so it was like I was either pregnant or breastfeeding for I don't even know how many years, a lot of years. And that was a time where I was also working. I also had my own businesses. So there was a lot of stress and I was kind of under that false belief that I could just do everything. I mean, the thing is, women can do a lot of amazing things, but at a cost. It always costs something when you say yes to something else. And I wasn't realizing the cost. And so I was even more tired. I was even more hormonally imbalanced, really, because what happens when you're pregnant is actually things can go really well. I remember we would have great sex when I was pregnant because your hormones are actually in favor of, lots of orgasms and blood flow and all the things. But it still is a lot for you to carry. You're tired more easily. Like I remember I would go to bed sometimes at 7 p.m. at night. I was just exhausted and I got a lot of migraines, a lot of pain, nausea. It is a lot to be pregnant. It is a lot.
Yeah, none of her pregnancies were easy. They were very painful. Yes. She felt sick for most of the time of her pregnancy. So it was a very challenging time.
Yeah. And then postpartum, you have a baby, your hormones just plummet. So you have like all these hormones and then it's just like boosh, like just drop. And also then you might be breastfeeding. I was breastfeeding. And so that brings in a lot to a marriage, right? You are being touched by your baby almost all the time. You're holding that baby, you're breastfeeding. Like there is a level of touch that a lot of times women are like, I don't want to be touched. And that can come across to their husband like as an excuse or as a whatever, but it is a real thing, especially when you have other kids, because then I was breastfeeding with other little babies. And so it can feel absolutely draining to be postpartum, to be in that breastfeeding time. And you have to be very intentional about taking care of yourself. And that's the thing too I want to say about this whole hormone conversation is like, you're not just doomed to have imbalanced hormones. Like I was doing something that entire time when I was pregnant, breastfeeding, all that whole cycle of supporting my hormones. I was always supporting my hormones because I didn't want to have this massive crash when I gave birth and stay in this really low imbalanced place. And same thing for men. You don't have to just, your testosterone just dies. And that's not the way it has to be. We are huge advocates of supporting your hormones naturally, supporting your body naturally to have that balance and get that balance back. But there's so many other things, right? So for me, like then all this chronic stress of working and trying to hold everything together. And we've talked before in podcasts where Adam was kind of checked out and he was more at work. And so I had this very heavy weight. And so you can see how that absolutely created a lot of disconnection in our marriage. And we've talked about before, as far as sex is concerned, like it was not an intentional thing. Sometimes randomly we'd wake up in the middle of the night and, kind of want each other. And that was like the extent of our sex life was like very random. And because we did feel very disconnected and I think we both felt overwhelmed and stressed, that wasn't a healthy place to stay in our marriage. And we were trying different things, but if you want to hear more about it, you can listen to our podcast on our story because we have 2 episodes about our story that we recently did. So Yeah, I mean, that's a big part. Well, then what happened for me was the adrenal fatigue came in, where my body just, it was like, I'm done. I very much so did not feel like myself. I was just more irritable, like snappy, and I was having way more headaches. I was having like migraines every single week and skin issues. And it was very clear that things were, and adrenals, that's part of where your body makes your hormones. And that's also part of your stress response system. And so when that starts to be overloaded, it's just working. You're in this very stressed, overwhelmed state in your body. Things start to shut down. It impacts you on every level. And so that was a really hard time for us. I can't even imagine what it felt like for you. I only know what it felt like for me. But, looking back, I'm like, man, that was probably super hard for you. Like, what do you even do? You probably felt helpless and whatever. So I did get help. I worked with a naturopathic doctor and got some help physically to support that. But all these things play a part in your marriage connection. Yeah. Because I think this can happen for so many couples. It's like, well, we're just in this season. Well, eventually this will get better. Eventually we'll be out of this season. But that's not necessarily a healthy way to approach that disconnection. If you're postpartum or you're pregnant or whatever, as a woman, like, it's not necessarily, let's just write this off. Right. Like, we just are going to have to not have connection right now.
There's a cost to that. I mean, there's a cost to letting that happen where we're just going to survive through it, but that can come to haunt you later on in the relationship when you're struggling with some of the aftermath of that survival period. And as we've mentioned many times, like, the masculine-feminine dynamic is a huge part of this. And was for us. Me thinking that just being a helper in the house was a good thing. So I'm trying to help, but I didn't understand for many years the mental load that she was carrying was really the stressor. It was really the thing that was causing a lot of this adrenal stuff, was she's trying to make all the decisions and carry everything and juggling a bazillion things inside of her head and her heart and her body, trying to keep everything floating. And here I am thinking my main role is I'm going to work, I'm providing, I'm making money out there, I'm coming back, I'm going to help at home. I'll take the kids for a little bit, or I'll do this or do that. But what I was doing was not really helpful because it wasn't relieving that burden. It was maybe giving her a little bit of respite here and there, but it wasn't actually changing the dynamic. It wasn't giving her room to breathe and relax and rest that she truly needed, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of it. And so a huge part of this is really understanding that masculine-feminine dynamic, because then it also creates this unhealthy loop, because when you're not acting in your masculine and feminine dynamic, you're typically doing things that are affecting your hormones as well. Both of them start to affect each other. When I'm stepping out of that role inside of the house and not living in my strength, and I wasn't taking care of myself either. I was living under a lot of stress, and my hormones were not where they needed to be. So I'm experiencing lower testosterone, higher stress levels, trying to manage everything. A lot of that was also just this anxiety going on in my brain, trying to people please, trying to keep everybody happy, trying to, like, all of that mental mess going on inside of me, and this emotional mess was really unhealthy for me and was keeping me stuck, not pursuing her, not, our sex connection, like Kara said, was not very regular. All of those things start to play in. And so I got to a point too where, because of all of that, and I wasn't taking care of my body very well either. I was maybe eating okay, but I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't working out on a regular basis. I was like, I've got a pretty active job, but I wasn't taking care of myself physically by really intentionally and regularly working out and doing things like that. And there's even a point there, where my testosterone was so low, I was having difficulty functioning sexually as well and performing in the bedroom. And so that was also, and then there's shame about that, and then there's anxiety about that, and there's all these other things going on. And so what it really took was taking some proper supplements that were going to help support me, eating a little bit better, getting sleep that I needed, and working out regularly. Those kind of things can shift things for a man in his testosterone and help to get him in a healthier place. And it's interesting, the more you support yourself there, then also that affects your emotional health, that affects your mental clarity, it affects your ability to make decisions. And so it affects that masculine dynamic in a big way when you start to support and take care of yourself physically as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times what we can go to here is, like Adam mentioned, he started to feel a little shame. We can sometimes go to shame and then we like think we need to just try harder. Like that's the way to healing. Like I just need to be a better wife, or I just need to get it together as a husband or whatever. And that is not the way. Try harder. You're already depleted. That is why the hormones are imbalanced.
Yes, exactly.
You are depleted. And so the answer isn't more effort. It's deeper healing. Like I said before, it's getting the support that you need, the nourishment, like Adam said, the sleep. And what helped us was to get curious about what our bodies were saying and needing. We got to learn about our bodies. Like if you don't know about what's going on for you hormonally in this season of life, or what your body's saying, different things coming up, your body has all kinds of symptoms. I like to think of it as like the lights on a dashboard on a car. There's all those things, right? They'll pop up. A light will come on when the engine needs checking, or the tire, or whatever. Things will happen in your body. Like what I was saying when I was in the adrenal fatigue, it's like, why am I having allergies all of a sudden? Why am I having more headaches? Why is my skin breaking out like crazy? Why am I snapping at everybody? Those are symptoms, and we need to listen to our body, what it's trying to say to us before the whole shutdown starts to happen. And I'm really honestly not being dramatic there, because it will happen. I cannot tell you how many women I work with who have autoimmune conditions and who are going through similar things like the adrenal fatigue, because they have been in such overwhelm for so long. And then your body starts to shut down. It starts to attack itself. All kinds of different things happen that are not things that you want to experience.
Yeah, and so a big part of like healing this for us was that we really had to address some of those things we mentioned, where there's this imbalance in our home life, where there's this imbalance in masculine and feminine dynamic and the different roles that we were taking on, and understand those things better and actually go after changing how we were showing up and how we were relating to each other in the relationship, and distributing some of that weight and that stress and that mental load and the burden that was going on in the family. And I needed to step into more of that, and she needed to step out of a lot of that in order for there to be space to heal. And we had to take care of handling those responsibilities in a more balanced and a wiser way.
Yeah, I mean, because I went to this naturopathic doctor trying to get adrenal help, but it took me, I don't know, I think like 7 years or something, because that alone wasn't helping. Because the things she was giving me, she was trying, right? She was giving me all kinds of supplements. She was telling me to try this, try that. But the root cause was a lot of the masculine feminine imbalance, that dynamic where I am still carrying so much, and he looks at himself as just this helper. Well, what do you need? Just tell me. And so I'm still carrying this burden. I'm still feeling the stress all the time. So until we got that part where we were really starting to rebalance that masculine feminine dynamic, that is where the change really started, because you just can't keep putting band-aids over an issue and expect it to go away. You can take a lot of supplements for a long time. You can, and it will support you in certain ways. But you really want to get to the root cause, right? You don't want to just keep throwing something on top of it. So our encouragement to you is, remember who you are. I think a lot of times when we're in this place where there are imbalanced hormones and we're feeling disconnected, we can see each other as enemies. Yeah. I know that was the case for us many times when his testosterone was down, and I can see it very clearly. You're not supporting your body. You're not getting any sleep. You're not taking care of yourself. Of course your testosterone is down. And I could easily get frustrated and like, well, yeah, now we're missing this important part of our marriage because you won't take care of yourself, right? I can easily blame him and see him as my enemy instead of remembering who I am.
And it's important to remind each other of that too. Like, that is one of the ways that you support each other in the marriage, especially in this kind of situation, is you remind the other person who they are. You say, hey, I see you for who you are. I see that you're a daughter of the King. I see that you are loved, and I see that you are cherished. And you remind them, because that actually gives a lot more support than blaming or shaming somebody for not showing up the way you want them to show up. You can always see each other that way. God always sees us that way. So you can see each other that way. And it's really powerful to give each other that kind of a reminder to really strengthen and help them see themselves that way.
And you're never able to do that. You're never able to remind somebody else of who they are when you're depleted, when you're hurting. So you have to first take care of your own heart, which is why we always talk about that, because it is so important. Yeah. We don't want you to go into behaviorism where you're just trying to do something to be good. We want it to be genuine. We want it to flow out of you. And then also get very specific about the actual symptoms. When you're talking to each other and explaining, like, this is what I'm experiencing, and get very specific for yourself so that you can get the help that you need. So you're experiencing vaginal dryness, like, please explain that to them, because you just saying like, well, my hormones, I don't know what's going on, and no, I don't want to have sex again. Like, then he's not getting it, right? But if you can explain some of the actual symptoms, or let's say like you're a man and you're having erectile issues, like, explain that. And maybe Adam, you want to explain that specifically, what the actual symptoms are.
And sometimes that's hard for a man because he's embarrassed by it, you know, like, you're embarrassed. You don't want to admit that, but it is important to kind of swallow that embarrassment and be like, no, this is important. It's important information. She's not going to understand why you're saying no unless you actually like explain exactly what's happening. Like, this isn't going to work. Like, we can't, we're not going to be able to do this. And there's a good reason. So you have to explain that sometimes. Otherwise, she's not going to understand why you're not gearing up for it.
Oh my! I think it's important sometimes to let the humor come in when it does. But, you know, and look at the whole picture. Like we kind of said before, like, come back to your identity, but look at the whole picture, the whole you. Like, you are not just a hormonal issue. You are not just an imbalance. There's more to you. I would also say, don't just self-diagnose everything from a few Instagram reels that you see. Like, there's so much stuff out there. And some of it is valuable. And I'm not saying that it isn't, but I always want you to listen to your body and get the support that you need. Don't give up if you're not getting the answers or the help that you really need, and dig deeper. Always try to come to the root issue.
And another really important part of healing this is to start rebuilding connection between the two of you in your relationship again. Be intentional about it and spend like 10 minutes a day just to check in with each other. Connect again, talk about some of these things, ask each other some questions, get curious about their experience of what they're going through, and seek to understand. That is only going to draw you guys closer together, and you don't feel alone in what you're dealing with.
And we actually have our marriage check-in journal. This is exactly why we created it, to help you to connect during some of these difficult times where some of the stressors might pull you apart. That book is so helpful. We'll make sure we put it in the show notes for you, but it's a daily thing. It doesn't take a lot of time. You don't have to think up different ways to connect. You can just use the book and create the special time for you to connect each day. Maybe you want to do it even on a walk together and just ask each other the questions, or via text throughout the day, or however you want to do it. It's up to you, but it is really important to prioritize that. And I also think that non-sexual touch is also huge, because part of this whole dynamic of the imbalanced hormones is the stress. And one of the best ways to support your body through stress is hugging. Like, hugging is so healing for the body. It is so healing. And you might be uncomfortable with that, and that's okay. But I encourage you to really intentionally give each other some nice long hugs every day, because it is truly so healing for the body, so calming for the nervous system. And I want you to know too, you are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. You were created with hormones. God knows exactly what's going on in your body. He's not confused by it. He's not surprised by it. And you're not less than, no matter what you're experiencing. And I was just listening to this sermon on Psalm 139, and it just reminded me again how beautifully, just intricately, miraculously made you are, and how amazing your body is. God created your body to heal itself in so many ways. So I just want to read you a little bit from Psalm 139. It says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." And that's you. You are his work, and you are wonderful. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. God, he loves you. He made you so incredibly. And sometimes we need to remind ourselves, like, we need to talk to ourselves that way. Like, you are amazing, body. Like, I've been kind of dealing with a little bit of a cold, and I love to close my eyes and visualize like all these little fighter cells in my body, so strong and healthy that God gave me to have and to work in my immune system. Get on your body's team and see it for the amazing, powerful being that you are. I think that is so key to remember that your body is not your enemy either. I actually am doing a very powerful workshop with a friend of mine who is a health coach. It's a free workshop called Healing from the Inside Out, where we're going to address a lot of these deeper issues that are going on physically for you. She's even going to do a free assessment for one of the people who's live on the workshop. And then I'm going to address what it is like for your body to be in survival mode and how to get out of that survival mode and how your marriage plays into that and your emotions and all of that. So it is going to be really powerful. You're not going to want to miss it. I'll put the link for that in the show notes as well so that you can grab your spot.
And we also have all those other ways that we offer support for you in your marriage and as individuals. Cara has her restored community for women. I have my refined community for men. And we support each other in there. And we go after getting to the root cause of some of those things that you're struggling with in your marriage. Not just the relationship, but also emotionally and mentally and spiritually and physically. And we also offer private coaching. Cara coaches women, I coach men, we coach couples together. So if you're struggling with some of these things, something that we said really hit home for you, by all means, book a coaching session with one or both of us, and we can talk through some of the ways that you can get support for yourself in this situation. So we would love it if you would rate and review the podcast, send it to somebody else who needs this information for their marriage. And we are so excited to see you next week for another episode of Marriage Unmasked.